Hi, this is Roy with DesignPoint, and today I'm going to be talking about your engineering team's transformation. We'll be looking at ways in which you can assess your engineering department and try to drive efficiency and get the most out of our really valuable resources that are our engineers. Quick agenda for today. First, why are we here? Just a little bit of a level set about what's the content of this presentation and why it might be beneficial to you here. And then we'll look at what best-in-class organizations are doing today, some of the data that I've pulled here that I'd like to share with you. And then we'll be talking about how we can drive improvement, standardization, and something called a single source of the truth to try to achieve best-in-class for each of your organizations. So that's where we're going today. So let's start off with our introduction here. Why are we here? So why might this presentation pertain to you? Well, maybe you're an engineering manager working at a company where engineering isn't consistently hitting your annual goals. Or maybe you are consistently hitting your goals, but you believe more is possible. Maybe you want to grow your team, but it's difficult to figure out how. Look, organic growth is tough. We want to increase the output of our engineering team, but how do we do so with the same inputs? And that leads to, of course, it's easy to just hire more engineers, but as I'm sure many of you have experienced, that often works out to be the most expensive option. So it's not a good option to throw money or throw engineers at your problem there. So we want to find out a way we can do more with what we currently have, and efficiency is going to be the key there. I want to share with you a quote here. For companies today, gaining a competitive edge means successful new product introductions in an ever-growing global market. This came from one of a few different reports I'm going to be sharing with you here today. I don't think there's anyone that would disagree with this statement. We recognize that the status quo isn't going to do it for us in terms of allowing for organic growth. We need to create new products. We can't keep working with what we currently have because our customers demand more than that. Here's another one here. The market demands higher functionality and customization under shortened cycle times. I'm sure a lot of you agree with this statement as well. The point is, this is where the pressure is at. You're not alone in this. Every company is experiencing this, that customers now want a more customized product and they want it faster than ever. And in fact, to share a number with you, 56% of design and manufacturing companies see a need to launch new products quickly, namely before their competition, as their top pressure. So there's really some validation to this statement as well. So that's our level set. That's where we're at. That's why we're here. And that's what we're trying to improve through this presentation. So let's dive into next best-in-class design and manufacturing companies. And we'll just take a quick look at what they're up to today. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Aberdeen Group, but they're a US-based independent research company, and they've actually polled hundreds of design, engineering, and manufacturing companies, much like many of yours. And they're looking namely at their challenges and the processes. And a lot of the data that I've actually pulled today that I'm going to share with you comes from a few of their reports. So we'll dive right into that. Again, I like to make the point, this is independent research data. This is not DesignPoint generated data. So with that, also, I wanted to talk for just a moment about DesignPoint. What is our role? Why am I the right person to be delivering this presentation? Well, DesignPoint as a company is, of course, a value-added reseller for SolidWorks products, Markforged, and 3D Systems 3D printers. We're, of course, a certified training provider in all of those as well. And we do design-on-demand services, engineering services for our customers. But really, the reason that we can help with this is that we've had the privilege of really working with hundreds of our different customers across dozens of industries, and we've been able to work with them and understand really what their processes are and what they do. And working with them and these solutions that we provide, we've really had the benefit of seeing their engineering transformations happen. So I'm here today to share some of the notes that I have from the experience that we've had with hundreds of different companies, much like yours. All right, great. So let's dive into some of the data on these Aberdeen reports here. Industry-leading companies are, well, according to the research, 23% more likely to hit new product launch targets. Great, that's the goal, right? New products and hitting the targets that we define for them. They're also 36% more likely to hit the product cost targets. So not only are we hitting the timeline of these targets, but we're doing it under budget as well. And they're also 47% more likely to meet product revenue targets. Again, great. This is industry-leading companies. So what's the benefit to you in knowing this data? The great news is that there's no shortage of opportunity here, and that's really the key I'm trying to highlight. It's not necessarily that in any one of your organizations there are urgent problems that need to be corrected. You're already a successful business as it is, but it's about going after this additional opportunity and how much more successful you could be hitting targets like these industry-leading companies are. And that's really the key. These industry leaders are the ones that have been successful at going after the opportunity. So with that, a quick poll question. What do you think the #1 action companies take to become industry leading? And I'll share with you here just some of the numbers. Well, 40% of these companies stated that education and development was the #1 action they took. 28% stated that reuse of their existing design data was what led them to be industry leading. And 23% stated that a focus on standards and automation really saved them, made them more efficient, made them industry leading. So this is the premise for the presentation I'm going to be sharing today here. I'll be diving into each one of these 3 items, and we'll talk about them a little bit more in depth. So let's start with the first one here. And I call this section, Assess the Best, Why Steven Needs to Get His CSWP. All right, let's start it off with another quote here. To meet the demands, which are increased quality and complexity under a decreased timeline, a popular strategy is to educate. This is pulled right from the Aberdeen report as well. And it's stating that this is where most companies are looking. If we educate, if our engineers are more knowledgeable, they're more likely to do more, to create more complex designs and do so faster. Great, that seems to make a lot of sense. So let me dive into a quick story here to share with you from one of our customers that I had the privilege of working with. So I'll paint you a little bit of a picture here. Steven is a mechanical engineer, and he works for, let's call him ABC Manufacturing Company. And Steven's been there for a while. He's one of the most experienced engineers there. He's got about 5 years worth of SolidWorks experience, including at a previous position that he worked there. And his manager actually said to us, if I just had 5 Stevens, we would really be in perfect shape. He's the most efficient, he's the best, he knows everything that we need to do, he's the go-to guy. I just need 5 of him, and that's what I need. Well, as a part of speccing out their improvement processes, we actually had Steven sit down and take the SolidWorks professional certification. He'd never heard about it before. So he sat down to take it, and no knock on Steven, but he barely passed the exam. And the reason for that is that in spite of all of his knowledge in SolidWorks and being a great engineer at ABC Manufacturing Company, he'd never heard of configurations, which are a section on the exam. And because of that, he actually almost failed the exam. So what did we learn from that? Well, how do you know what you don't know? It's a tricky question to ask. Even the best engineers don't know necessarily where their gaps are. And with that, how do you know what areas you need to educate in? So how can Steven go and learn more about configurations if he doesn't know that they exist? And so we've seen this example at countless companies we've worked with, that we don't know what we don't know, and that's the first challenge itself. So again, just summaries from ABC Manufacturing Company here. Education is critically important, but targeting it only to what you think you need to know can be extremely dangerous. If we don't know what we don't know we need to learn there. In addition, it's easy to assume your best is the best. Companies often assess their talent when looking for places of internal development, and it's easy to assume you should focus on the newest or least experienced team members. But be truly honest with yourself with where you stand. You should also assess the best. So, how to educate and develop best-in-class organizations? Well, what kind of things are they doing? Let me share with you some of the details here. What we found from our experience is that best-in-class organizations are appointing functional leaders or technical evangelists internal to their organization to drive efficiency within items like CAD specifically. So I'll give a couple of examples here. Maybe this individual is a CAD admin. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just the best SOLIDWORKS user. But we appoint them as the leader, and we set their goal as to make everyone in the organization more efficient. Some of the ways that they achieve that is with concepts like a CAD huddle, a 15-minute meeting once a week where we just talk CAD. A couple of other terms for that: coffee and CAD. Bring your problems, bring your questions, and you're sharing tips and tricks. And this sharing of information internal to the organization is really beneficial to all of the CAD users, and you're learning from your best. We also see best-in-class organizations are actively engaging in the SOLIDWORKS community. And there's a variety of different ways that they do that. SOLIDWORKS forums is a big one. There's a lot of content on the SOLIDWORKS forums about common problems that you run into in engineering. I'll put it this way. There's hundreds of companies out there that are doing design and engineering work. Chances are, if you're running into a problem, you're not the first one to have hit that. Now, I'm certainly not asking you to air your dirty laundry out on the forum, but it's definitely worth a look. Somebody has probably run into that problem and might have a creative solution you hadn't thought of. User groups are another great way to engage in the SOLIDWORKS community there. User groups meet about once a quarter typically in your area, and it's a location where users can just meet up, users of the software, and talk CAD for a couple hours. The other great thing about user groups, they provide pizza, so free food, that's always great. Lastly, blogs, YouTube, online resources, etc. are a great way to educate and develop. Now, I'll be brutally honest, like there's a lot of great content online. There's also a lot of really bad content online. So definitely you have to be careful with what you're doing, and it may not be the only way to educate, but make sure you're making use of the speed of the internet. The rate at which a user can learn something is only limited by their ability to consume information, and the internet has really helped with that. So definitely make sure you're making use of those resources. I'll give you a couple of other ones here. Attend events, SOLIDWORKS engineering events. For example, DesignPoint does the More is Possible event once a year. Definitely a great learning event for SOLIDWORKS users to attend. Trade shows, tech talks, networking events, all are going to broaden your horizon or broaden your view on what you're doing in design and engineering and provide that insight. And of course, the SOLIDWORKS World Conference is another great one. I always recommend, as a SOLIDWORKS user, if you can find time to make it out to the World Conference, or at least send a few members of your engineering team, there is a ton of great content, great material that gets shared there that you can bring back to your organization. And then, of course, my.solidworks.com is also an option. Definitely make sure you check out that website. You'll need a SOLIDWORKS login for that. But there's a lot of great content on there, and again, in the form of linking to the blog and the forum, as well as online training content. The big piece I want to highlight with this, the only cost to any of these items that I have shared with you so far is your time. And of course, your time is very valuable, but there's no cost to these otherwise. And that's why industry-leading organizations are able so easily to embrace them and instill them in the framework of what an engineering development process looks like. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't share, formal classroom training is, of course, a great way to educate and develop. Formal classroom training is, there's not really a substitute for it when you need to learn specific areas, whether it's just CAD-specific topics, SOLIDWORKS surfacing training, for example, or even specific areas of importance like GD&T. There is no substitute for formal classroom training in a lot of ways for that. So definitely somewhere a way to look as well and to evaluate your team and educate them through formal training. Great. Now for the managers on the call here, what about validation? Well, another lesson that we've learned from working with our customers is that all best-in-class organizations are always validating learning. It's not easy enough to just say, I sent so-and-so to a training place. You have to validate that that user learned the information and is applying it effectively. So how do we validate learning? Well, I'll give you a quick one here. SOLIDWORKS certification. And that's exactly the example we used with Stephen here. It's a great way to validate your knowledge in SOLIDWORKS itself. And it's free for subscription service customers. You can use the associate or the professional exam, or as well as all of the professional advanced subject exams. Great ways to be validating your learning. And best-in-class organizations put SOLIDWORKS certification as a part of their onboarding or as a part of their development, career development processes. It's a great way to simply validate learning. It's of course not the only one, but it's definitely a great start. So make sure you're using those free certifications. If you need help getting those free certifications, just reach out to your SOLIDWORKS reseller. I'd be happy to assist you. All right, great. So now you're efficient, but not all the same. We've educated the team. They've filled in these gaps in their knowledge, or they're in the process of it. How do we continue to drive efficiency? Well, standardization is a great way to do that, and that's what we're going to be talking about here. So a quick poll. How many different ways are there in SOLIDWORKS to open a part file? Think about that for just a second. At the time that I was writing this presentation, I was able to come up with 6 off the top of my head. 6 different ways to just open a part file. So translate that now to your organization and the design work that you do. Imagine how many different ways there are to design your specific product. And really what this is sharing with you is that your engineers might be doing the same thing, but you can bet they're probably not all doing it the same way. Designing the same product, many companies have shared with us that 2 engineers, even sitting next to each other, might do the same process in very different ways. And the lack of standardization really slows down productivity because of the interpretation time required. So that's where standardization is going to be key. 23% of companies reported their top action to improve CAD productivity was establishing standards and automating more functions. If we can make there be a standard process for how the users do a certain operation, there's no interpretation time. So that's what we want to do. So how do we drive standardization? Well, here's where I'm going to provide you with some of the solutions that we've seen, again, our best-in-class organizations implementing. Well, first off, are you utilizing all the standardization tools within the CAD program that you have to their full potentials? And from working with our customers, we find a lot of them are not. Simple examples like document templates. When a customer of ours, when a user starts a new SOLIDWORKS file, are all of the custom properties already in the template? Or are they creating those every time? That's a definite place for error. What about shared libraries? Things like SOLIDWORKS Toolbox. Are you recreating hardware or re-downloading from McMaster every time? Or are you pulling from your shared library, which already has your part numbers installed? And another one, SOLIDWORKS Design Checker is a great way to automate checking drawings, make sure fonts are the same, make sure views aren't overlapping, things like that. Great standardization tools that, again, no cost to you, come with SOLIDWORKS that you could be implementing. Think about documentation as well, and not just for external use, but also for internal. One of the things we've observed is all too many internal processes are only passed down by travel knowledge or word of mouth. They're not really written anywhere. And the problem with that is, more so than just the risk, if it's not documented, it's impossible to enforce, make sure a user is doing it the right way. So a lot of our customers take to documentation of tasks as well, beyond just CAD, of their internal processes. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention as well data management software. So further standardization can of course be achieved and driven using data management softwares. I'll be talking about that a little bit further in the next point here. So let's dive into our last point here, the single source of the truth. Stephen is not Google. So let's go back to our friend Stephen here for just a moment. The manager mentioned to me that Stephen is really our go-to guy. Whenever we have a question on something, we always go to Stephen. Whenever there's a problem in CAD, they go to Stephen. Whenever something doesn't line up on the shop, they go to Stephen. He really knows the answer. So, with that, we ask a question, well, with dozens of interruptions per day, how much work is Stephen really getting done? And this is a challenge at many organizations here. Your best engineer is not being focused on the highest value activities because he's constantly putting out fires. because they're constantly serving as Google. When somebody doesn't know the answer, they're coming to Steven. So what we're driving at is we really need Steven to focus on the highest value activities, which is the design that he's best at. So how do we do that? Well, let me share with you another piece here. What do you think the number one complaint is at many organizations here? Or what do you think the number one question they're asking Steven, the guy who knows it all, is? Believe it or not, it's something along the lines of, well, what folder did you save that into again? There's a lot of data being created by engineering departments and teams, and finding the right data is a huge challenge. Knowing where it is it's a huge burden on the engineering team. In fact, I'll share a stat with you here. You can read reports about this all over the place. This one came from McKinsey specifically. Employees spend 1.8 hours every day, or an average of 9 hours per week, searching and gathering the information they need just to do their job. So just to paint a picture for you, that's imagine you hire 5 engineers, but only 4 show up to work. Or in dollars, over 2,000 hours per year. Let's say you pay an engineer $50 an hour. That's almost $6 grand right there in just searching and finding information. So best-in-class organizations are the ones that are saving themselves this money, saving themselves this cost by addressing this concern. And they do so by establishing a centralized location to search, share, and reuse data across all departments. Again, the idea is not going to Steven and asking him where it is, having the searchability to be able to find it yourself quickly and efficiently. Best-in-class organizations also share that 68% of new designs are creating at least some existing CAD data. Well, how are you able to do that if you can't find the old CAD data? And that's where that searchability for reuse is so critically important. And this actually leads to a 15% decrease in overall length of development. So right there, that's their saving. That's how they're getting their products to market faster. And overall, that means employees are spending 43% less time searching for files, data transfers, etc. And you can do the math to translate into how much money that's saving you per year. Great. So broadly, let's talk about how we can share data. What we found from working with our customers is the following guidelines for using whatever data sharing solution you choose to implement here. You should create a solution that establishes relationship between files. And that's critical because of searchability and traceability. When one file needs to be changed, we understand all the files that are affected by that. And it creates that traceability. Whatever data management solution should also integrate with downstream tasks and other departments. If you can share your data downstream, then you're able to leverage it again, and you're not recreating or redoing work. Data management solution should also have overwrite protection and user synchronization. Right? Each user should have their own login, and it should protect your data and prevent users from overwriting work. So controlling permissions is critical with that. And also the data management solution, that central repository, should also have integration with enterprise applications, right? You shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel to get it to work with the applications that you're currently working. It should be simple, and it should be able to talk to other applications that you're using in your organization. So these are the broad guidelines. There are many different products that of course meet this. What we're really driving at is establishing what we call a single source of the truth. And what that means is that, we don't have to debate whose version of the file is correct or which revision of the file is correct. When was it output? Was it output last Tuesday? Was it output today? We go to whatever this system is, this single source of the truth, this PDM store, and that's where we're able to quickly, efficiently find the data and know that it's up to date. So we're driving towards that result. One such solution, of course, is SOLIDWORKS PDM. And we have been effectively implementing that, of course, for our customers for years and establishing that single source of the truth through SOLIDWORKS PDM. So quick wrap up and summary here. Industry-leading organizations are constantly assessing their best and using that to drive education and development. In addition, they validate the results of everything that they're developing the team on to make sure that it's being applied. They also standardize processes, and they document procedures very effectively because we understand word of mouth is not only dangerous, but it's not scalable. And best-in-class organizations as well establish a single source of the truth. and that facilitates design reuse and is fully searchable. So all users are able to find the information and they're not wasting time digging for answers. If you need a little bit more detail, again, all of this content has come from years of DesignPoint working with customers and really the privilege that we've had of understanding how organizations, what their processes are and what they do. So we've actually turned this into a service that we can do. We call it a Seek to Understand Day. And basically we'll come in and sit down and work much more in detail with your specific organization, with your engineering management, your engineers themselves, all the way through the process to really understand what we can deliver for you. And we actually deliver it in the form of a report, looks something like this here, of all of our findings here. A lot of the results of the report that we share are at no additional cost to you, like some of the tips that I've shared today, changing processes or some of the education. It's just a commitment of your time and to getting better. Of course, some of the recommendations we make may have some costs associated with it, whether it's implementing PDM software or technical communication softwares or rapid prototyping to really assist and speed up your processes. So really a great service, and we're finding it very well received by our customers that have worked with us. So if you need any more information on this, do feel free to reach out to us directly, and we'd be happy to speak with you about that. So with that, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate your attention and hope you found benefit in my presentation. Again, my name is Roy Mutalik with DesignPoint. Thank you so much.